Vintage Master Set Review Blue. And first up, Academy Elite, 3 in a blue, 0/0. And it comes into play with X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is the number of instant and sorcery cards in all graveyards. You can pay 2 in a blue and remove a counter from it to draw a card and discard a card. I think this card is mostly going to be unplayable. It is hard to fill up your graveyard in this set. I mean, there is cards like Frantic Search and Fact or Fiction, but they're not. Doesn't put you ahead too much. I mean, you need to have more spells to put into play. I think in most decks the card is not going to be good enough. Also, the ability is not great. I mean, you shrink it, that's huge. Looting is nice, but the fact that you don't actually get to draw a card is not great. I'm going to give it a 3. I think in a control mirror where both players have a lot of spells, the card could be good. But even then, it's not out of the world insane. I mean, I think it has to be a 4/4 to be worth it. A 3/3 that loots when you shrink it is probably not going to be good enough. So mostly going to try to stay away from Academy Elite. However, this next card, Ancestral Recall, is a straight up 10. It is a 3/1 for 1 mana. You don't have to do any work. Just have to pay 1 blue mana, cast it, and probably enjoy your victory. And yeah, you don't have to be a special archetype. It's very good in aggressive deck as is in control decks, and I would probably try to splash it. Although splashing in this format is not that easy. Okay, Aquamoeba is a nice and interesting little card. 1 in a blue for 1/3. You discard a card and you switch its power and toughness. That ability is not super useful. I mean, you can use it to trade with larger creatures. It was mostly back in the day when damage stacked. That was kind of interesting. Anyway, you could beat a 2/2 in combat with this, but you have to discard 2 cards. So you could discard a card, switch it to 3/1, then before damage, put damage on the stack, then you discard another card and made it there 1/3 again. But that costed you 2 points. But mostly Aquamoeba is nice as a madness outlet, because when this is in play, you will have madness for all your cards, provided you can pay the madness cost. So you can go turn 2 Aquamoeba and turn 3 Arrogant Worm. And that's interesting about Aquamoeba is that sometimes you want to consider whether you want to deal extra damage with Aquamoeba when you attack with it, or if you want to keep a surprise factor of an Arrogant Worm. It's going to depend from situations, but I think Aquamoeba is going to be worse than Wild Mongrel, but I'm going to give it a 6 in a Madness deck. In a super dedicated Madness deck, it could even be a 7. If you're not playing Madness, the card is not super good, because the ability is not really that useful. Also, Aquamoeba helps you with Threshold, which some green cards care about. Move on, we have Brain Freeze. 1 in a blue. Target player puts the top 3 cards of his or library into his or graveyard, and it also has Storm. So in Limited, we play 40 card decks, and by the turn you go off with Storm, which is hopefully around turn 5, or after that you're probably going to be too late, 5 or 6. If your opponent hasn't drawn any extra cards, he has 32 cards left in his library, which means that you need to cast Brain Freeze. I'm sorry, he has 27 cards left in his or her library, and then you have to cast Brain Freeze for 9. If they've drawn some cards, or if you have some random card that mills them, I can't think of any right now, you may be able to cast Brain Freeze for 8. There are no Eldrazi or reshuffle effects in this set, so Brain Freeze is mostly going to be better than Tendrils. It also is 2 mana cheaper. Downside is that if you don't kill them with Brain Freeze, it doesn't do anything, whereas Tendrils may buy you another turn to maybe top deck another Tendrils. But Brain Freeze is the superior of the 2 win conditions. And if you're a Storm deck, well, it's kind of hard to give Brain Freeze a grade, because if you don't have a win condition, Brain Freeze is almost like a 10. Because hack free, if you don't have any win conditions, you have to take Brain Freeze over everything. So it's like, has almost like an infinite rating. But if you already have a win condition, it depends on what the win condition is. If you already have a Tendrils, I would not be too interested in Brain Freeze. However, if I had one Brain Freeze already. Brain Freeze number 2 is much more interesting because they stack well. Because if you cast a Brain Freeze and then another Brain Freeze, it takes much less for you to win. So you can actually cast first Brain Freeze for 4 and the second for 5, and that wins you the game. Whereas if you have one Brain Freeze and one Trend Race, they don't help each other. I'm not going to give Brain Freeze a grade, but you know when you want it. And let's move on to Brainstorm, a card which is always in a consideration of getting banned in Legacy, but I don't think it's that insane in Vintage Cube. There are a cycle of fetch lands. You are constant to play fetch lands. And Brainstorm's value goes up if you have that. If you're playing Storm, it's also nice to have Brainstorm. It's one of the last cards you cast, because if you're going to win the same turn, it's almost like you drew 3 cards because you're putting back lands that you're not going to play. I think that Brainstorm is a 6. Could even be a 5. But if you have some fetch lands, it goes up in value. But it is an interesting card. I mean, in one of the last turns of the game, if you cast Brainstorm, you're going to have a lot more options than if you just cycle it. So it is better than cycling, but don't overrate Brainstorm in Vintage Masters. But it's fine. Choking Feathers, 3 and a blue, top up to 4 target creatures, and it's a cycling for 1 and a blue. Now, cycling cards go down in value when they're not white or red, because white-red is mostly the cycling colors. That being said, sometimes you end up in a blue-white cycling deck if you get enough of the cards. So this card is interesting, because in a tempo deck, it can be cast for the win sometimes. But you have to be playing against a deck which care about blocking, because if your opponent's not caring about blocking, it could also be used, I guess, in your opponent's turn to tap up to 4 target creatures. Let me give Choking Terrors a 6. It has a huge upside, which is sometimes it wins you the game. And if worse comes worse, you can cycle it and tap something. It's working like a pressure point, which is 1 and a white to tap a creature, draw a card. And Choking Terrors has all gravy on top because you can cast it for 4 mana. So it's a neat little card, but yeah, I'm going to give it a 6. And it is a card which I want in my blue tempo decks, but if I'm playing Storm, I guess it's fine to buy a turn, but yeah. Okay, Circular Logic. You will remember this card as Countervailing Winds from newest set, Hour of Devastation. This card does not have cycling, instead it has Madness. And it counters a spell unless Chrome plays 1 for each card in your graveyard, which are going to be 2 or 3. Sometimes this card's not going to do anything. If you have Aqua Amiibo or Wild Monger, you can sometimes feed Circular Logic, so you discard some excess lands, and then to get up to the requisite number of cards in your graveyard. I think Circular Logic is like a 6. I'm not in love with counterspells. This is not really a counterspell format, but it also depends on the matchup. If you're playing against an aggressive deck, it's not very good. If you're playing against a Storm deck, it's very good, because you can counter a key spell. If you're playing against a little slower deck, can also be good. But I wouldn't overrate it. I think it's like a 6. And if I'm not playing a Madness deck, I don't like it at all. I think if I'm playing some kind of tempo deck, it's also going to be a side. Cloudjin, I'm not in love with this creature. It's a 5 and a blue for a 5/4 flying. It can only block creatures with fly. Now, if this had been a 5/4 flyer for 6, it wouldn't even be that insane. This format is pretty fast, and 6 mana is tough to get. And the fact that this can't even stabilize the ground, which I don't like this card. I think it's a 4, and I can even see decks where I'm not even going to play it. So Cloudjin, it's an okay finisher, but be prepared to board it out. I actually like a common, which is called Killer Whale, better than Cloudjin. So not in love with Cloudjin. Cloud of Fairies. Now there's a second blue cycler. 1 and a blue for a 1/1 with flying. And when it ends the battlefield, you untap up to 2 lands. And then it has cycling too. So it's sort of like a free spell with cycling. In Storm, it's okay. I mean, it adds a Storm count for free, or you can dig. So in a Storm deck, I think it's like 5. It's fine to play. In a blue tempo deck, I like it a little better because, again, you can cycle it, and it's also going to trigger your random astral slides. But it is a pretty cheap flyer, comes down on turn 2, doesn't cost you any mana. And it's pretty nice if you have some card draw spells, because problem with Cloud of Fairies is even though you untap some lands, you're paying a card for a 1/1 flyer. That's usually not worth it. But it does have some nice interactions in this format with Storm. There is a card that's not really a Storm card in the sense that it's good in a Storm deck, Temporal Fissure I'm talking about, but that's a good tempo card, and Cloud of Fairies works pretty well with Temporal Fissure. So don't overrate Cloud of Fairies. I think it's ranging between a 5 or a 6. The fact that it has Cycling makes the card playable though, I think. Because you can always, if a 1/1 fly is not relevant, you can cash it in for another card. Control Magic, wow, now this is a bomb. This is original Control Magic. Nowadays you almost always have to loop through some hoops to get a Control Magic. Either it costs 5 mana, has some downside, or your lands don't untap. But Control Magic is probably one of the best cards in the set. This is a Stone Cold 10. If I have a pack with the Ancestral and Control Magic, I mean, I'm obviously going to take Ancestral if I get to keep the cards. And I'm probably going to take Ancestral either way, but it is pretty close. Control Magic is just a Stone Cold 2 for 1. And it's actually hard even to interact with the Control Magic in this set. There isn't that many bounce spells or disenchant effects. So Control Magic gets a 10. Counterspell. Now this card has a pretty high upside. I think most decks want Counterspell except the Storm decks, but Tempo decks want it because it's a cheap Counterspell. And the Madness decks also want it because they interact with broken stuff. So I think Counterspell is an 8. This is a super efficient Counterspell, though you have to be somewhat heavy blue to play a Counterspell reliably. I think Counterspell goes down in value if blue is your minor color. So if I were playing a blue-red deck with a bunch of Beetleback Chiefs and other cards with a red commitment, it goes down in value. But 8 for Counterspell, super cheap, efficient card. Deep Analysis, this is another sweet card, and it's good in Storm, it's good in Madness, it's good in all black decks. I gave Deep Analysis an 8. 3 and a blue, sorcery, target player draws 2 cards, flashback 1 and a blue, pay 3 life. So it's actually 4 for 1, if you can afford to pay total 6 mana and 3 life, but you can split up the costs over a couple of turns. So also Deep Analysis has some synergy with Aquamoeba, because if you don't have, let's say you're stuck on 2 mana, you can cast Aquamoeba, and then you can discard Deep Analysis to Aquamoeba and cast it for 2 mana. 2 mana Divination, it's not the worst card in the world. Yeah, and sometimes you mill it randomly with Factor Fiction and stuff like that. Frantic Search, it also has very great synergy with Frantic Search. I think Deep Analysis is an 8. Rock solid card draw spell. Okay, let's move on to Ephemeron. 4 blue for a 4/4 flyer that you can discard a card to return it to its owner's hand. So there's a couple of sweet things going on here. It is a Madness outlet. One thing is that when you reach 6 mana, most of the time you can afford to cast most Madness cards anyway. But the fact that they now have Flash is kind of cute with cards like Arrogant Worm. And sometimes the cost reduction adds up too. It's also hard to kill. I mean, you can't cast Expunge on it. It can't cast Swords to Plowshares. It dogs almost all removal. The only downside for Ephemeron is that it is slow. This format is fast and 6 mana is a lot. That being said, it has flying, so it does block Battle Screech tokens. I'm going to give Ephemeron an 8. Factor Fiction, another great card draw spells. As you can see, it's kind of a theme. Here's a lot of good card advantage cards in blue. Factor Fiction is 3 in the blue, and you reveal the top 5 cards of your library. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles, put 1 pile in your hand and the other in your grave. So it's hard for your opponent to make an optimal Factor Fiction split in Limited, because he doesn't have perfect information of your hand, and it's hard to get these things right. So either you're going to get 2 great cards, or you're going to get 3 cards where 1 is good, one is great and one is bad. I mean, it's a lot of situations which can happen here. So I'm going to give Fact or Fiction another 8. Another reason why Fact or Fiction is great is that it fills up the graveyard for threshold. So if you're playing blue-green and have a couple of Grisly Fates, Fact or Fiction gets even more value. Flusterstorm, this is card which I almost think is unplayable. It's super narrow. It's like a Dispel that also is a Force Spike, or a spell, because I should say, because it counts the spell is being cast. It is, however, very good against the Storm deck. Now, the problem when you're playing Flusterstorm against the Storm deck is it's kind of awkward to target stuff in on Magic Online. I have never done it, and I don't even want to do it. But it could be an insanely good sideboard card against Storm. So it's a 10 against the Storm deck because they can't win without their spell. And I think it's a 1 or a 2. A 2, I should say, in every other matchup. So Flusterstorm is either a 2 or a 10. It's insane against Storm, bad against everything else. Force of Will. Now this is a card which is much better in Constructed and in Cube than in Vintage Masters Draft, because while Vintage Masters Draft is a powerful draft format, it's not that powerful you can spend a card to counter something. So Force of Will, you 2-for-1 yourself and lose a life. It is good if you have some extremely powerful things going on, like let's say you have a Jace the Mind Sculptor or Ancestral, or you have something very powerful. Then Force of Will goes up in value, but this is not really the greatest format for Force of Will. I'm going to give Force of Will a 5. I think that you're going to probably main deck it, but I could see sideboarding out Force of Will against an aggressive deck. Frantic Search. Now this is a key card in this format. It's good in Storm because you add a Storm count for no mana and you add options. You draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards. It's also good in Reanimator and it is good in Madness. So there's 3 different blue decks that want Frantic Search. I'm going to give Frantic Search an 8. It just does a lot of things. Almost all decks want it. And they're going to be in high demand, I think. The only deck that don't want Frantic Search is like the blue-white Tempo deck. But Reanimator wants it, Storm wants it, and Madness wants it. Future Sight, 2 blue. You play with the top card of your library revealed, and you may play the top card of your library, which includes lands, by the way. So this is not like a Vance's Blasting Cannons, you can play lands. This is a card advantage machine, but it is slow, doesn't affect the board. I'm going to give Future Sight a 6. I think there are matchups where it's going to be the best card in the deck. But there are also going to be matchups where it's too slow. Because first of all, it costs 5 mana and doesn't do anything to the board. And then there are sometimes going to draw you like 3 or 4 cards. But it's going to take time. And you also, the problem with Future Sight sometimes is you reveal a card on the top of your library. But it's not really the card you want to cast this turn. Because you have other cards in your hand. And then you're in the dilemma of, do I want to cast a card on top of my library to get card advantage? Or do I want to cast a card that is best on this board in my hand? Sometimes you lose because you really want to get value from Future Sight. It's a very powerful card, but there are better formats for Future Sight. Alright, Gush. Now here's a little bit of a trap. I don't think Gush is very good in this format at all. I think that it's fine if you're playing Storm, but the cost of returning 2 lands is massive. I could see some value for Gush in a blue-black Reanimator deck where you bounce 2 lands so you can get up to 8 cards and then discard to hand size. But I'm actually going to give Gush a 4. I don't like Gush too much. I think that the ability of returning 2 lands is not very good. If you have fast bomb, alright, then it's good. But Gush is a 4. I don't like Gush that much at all. Alright, moving on to High Tide. If you're not playing Storm, this is a 1. Never play it. Unplayable. If you're playing Storm, it depends on how heavy blue you are. If you're mono blue, Storm, for some reason, this card is like a 9 or a 10. I would only take like a Brain Freeze over it if I didn't have a win condition. But if you're playing blue-black Storm with a bunch of black cards and like a mana base of 9 islands, 8 swarms. I don't think High Tide is good either, because you need to... you get 1 mana back once you tap a blue island, but you need to have this is worse than Dark Ritual if you don't have 4 islands in play. It's the same as Dark Ritual if you have 3 islands in play. So High Tide, don't overrate it, but if you're close to mono blue Storm, you can play it. It is possible to go mono blue Storm with Brain Freeze. You have a bunch of frantic searches, cantrips, and then High Tide could be really good. Throw a turnabout in and you're in business, but don't overrate it. Jace the Mind Sculptor. Wow. I actually think Jace the Mind Sculptor is a 9. It's not a 10 because it is a pretty aggressive format, and I can see games where you play Jace, bounce a creature, and then it dies. We play Jace, Brainstorm, your opponent kills it. Red has a bunch of burn spells to target. It's still insane, and if you ever play against some kind of control mirror and play Jace, you're just gonna win. But Jace is not a 10. I think Control Magic is better than Jace, even though Jace beats Control Magic by bouncing the creature. But this is almost like when Jace was in Standard with Bloodbraid Elf. There, it's just a too aggressive format for Jace to be insane. It's still insane, but I'm not going to give Jace a 10. I'm going to give it a 9. And if this was a Phantom Draft and I saw Jace and Control Magic in a pack, I'd probably take Control Magic. I think Control Magic is better in this format. Keen-Eye Aven, 3 and a blue for a 2/3 with flying, cycling 2. So, filler. The body is fine, 2/3 fly for 4 with nothing to get blown away. And the cycling is fine. I'm going to give Keen-Eye Aven a 5. It's okay. Killer Wave, 3 blue, 3/5, and it can gain flying for 1 blue mana. Now this is sort of an efficient body. It blocks almost everything, and once you have blue mana up, you can also block flyers. So this is actually a 6. I think I'm going to give it 6. This is just a very efficient card, and while it's not super powerful, I think it just has about the right size for this format. Krovikan Sorcerer, 2 and a blue for a 1/1. Discard a non-black card and tap it, draw a card, so you loot. So it's a looter for 3 mana, which is, probably fine. Then you can discard a black card to draw 2 cards and discard 1 of them. So there you actually get to loot an additional time. Now, this card is good in Madness and it's good in Reanimator. It is pretty slow though, but I'm gonna give it a 6 just because it's so slow. And I also kind of don't like the Reanimator deck too much. And Madness decks I've found often have better options than Krovikan Sorcerer, because the Madness deck often ends up being pretty aggressive, and then having a 3 mana that can't attack or block can be a little bit of a liability. Mana Drain, blue. Counter target spell, and in your next main phase you get X mana or X as a spell's converted mana cost. This is just straight up 10. This is a power level of the power 9, I think. You get to counter something for blue, which is good. And if you do this early, it's possible you can play like a 6-drop on turn 3. If you're on the draw, your opponent costs a 3-drop, you mana range, you can cost a 6-drop. This card is just unbelievable in power level. And even when it's at its worst later in the game, it's still a counter spell. It still deals with anything. So, Stone Cold Bomb. Man of War. 2 and a blue for 2/2 that returns a creature to its owner's hand. Now this is a role player. This is a 7. It's good against tokens because you just blow the token away. And against expensive creatures you bounce it. And it's great against cards like Imperial Arm or Brilliant Halo. And if your opponent is playing Reanimator, you can bounce a reanimated creature. So Man of War is just a great card, and you should pick it highly. Mind's Desire, 4 blue, shuffle your library, then exile the top card of your library. Until the end of your turn, you may play that card without paying its mana cost. So you can play it, and it has Storm. This is only playable in the Storm deck. I would never play it outside of anything else, and in the Storm deck, it is probably pretty good. I'm going to give it an 8 if you're in the Storm deck, and a 1 if you're playing another deck. Morphling. Now here's a card which haven't really stood the test of time in Constructed, but in Limited it is still very good. 3 blue for a 3/3. 1 blue mana, you can untap it, so you can give it 7 of Vigilance. 1 blue against flying, 1 blue against Shroud, so it's sort of like hexproof because you can control when it has Shroud or not. And for 1 mana it gets +1, -1, and for 1 mana it gets -1, +1. So back in the day, this card was considered to be the best creature in Magic. That was when damage went on the stack, and it doesn't do that anymore. Still a very good card, but it's not as good as you probably think it is, because even though it has a lot of abilities, it's hard to get that much blue mana to go nuts. I mean, and its format is pretty aggressive. I'm gonna give Morphling a 8 still, because it does a lot of different things. But it's not a 10, and it's definitely not a 9. Or I should probably set it into reverse order. Museo, Visionary Architect, 1 blue, 1/3. 3 in a blue, tap, look at the top X cards of your library. X is the highest converted monster among artifacts you control. You may reveal an artifact card from among them and put it into the battlefield. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in order. This card is a 3. I think it's incredibly hard to get to work. You need a bunch of artifacts, and 1 3 for 3 is not a great card. Actually, I'm gonna take that back. It's a 2. I think the card is completely unplayable. You need like 1,000,000 Su-Chis for this card to be good. Because the ability only does something if you have 2 artifacts. You need to have 1 in play and 1 in the top of your decks. And the stars just have to align perfectly. So I'm going to give it a 2. You know, every once in a while, in a blue moon, it will be good. Obsessive Search, 1 blue, draw card, Madness blue. So this is a card which works good with some Madness outlets and less good with some others. If you think of a card like Aquamoeba, Obsessive Search is not actually that good with Aquamoeba, because you're actually not really doing anything with that ability. You switch Aquamoeba's power and toughness, but that doesn't net your card. So Obsessive Search with those kind of Madness outlets doesn't actually do that much. While Mongo is a little better because it still gives you +1/+1. You really want to combine Obsessive Search with cards like Frantic Search and Krovikan Sorcerer, where you actually gain something from discarding a card. So I think Obsessive Search is a 5. It's not a card that you have to pick very highly, but it cycles and it adds to Storm Camp, so it's probably fine in Storm too. It's also a neat little sideboard card against Hymn to Torah, but that's a little narrow, I guess. But yeah, if you have a bunch of Krovikan Sorcerers or Frantic Searches, the card goes up in value. Ophidian, 2 in a blue for 1/3, and it attacks and isn't blocked, you may draw a card, and if you do, it doesn't do any combat damage. So it's like a Scroll Thief, or a worse version of Yessian Thief. This is a card that hasn't really stood the test of time either. I think this card is a 4. It's a hard card to get to work. I mean, you can combine it with Mana Wars, but if you hit once with Ophidian, yeah, that's not actually that good, because a 1 3 for 3 probably wasn't worth a card. You need to hit 2 times with Ophidian for the card to be worth it, I think. And then you're doing a lot of work to not do nothing. And there's a lot of matchups where Ophidian can't even attack. It is pretty good against the Shadow decks, because they can't block, so you can get some free cards out of that. But I'm not going to pick Ophidian very high, I don't like it at all. Owl Familiar, 1 in a blue for a 1/1 flyer. When it dies, you loot. I'm also going to give this a 4. I think it's very low value. The problem with the card is that it's hard to control the effect. So if Owl Familiar dies in a less than opportunistic moment, you can't cast something with Madness. And it's hard for Owl Familiar to trade for a real card. I think Owl Familiar is going to shine against the decks with a bunch of X ones, because then you can block and loot. But yeah, compare this card to the card from Dragons of Tarkir, which drew a card when it dies. It was a 1/1 flyer. Owl Familiar. And that was much better. This is miles from that. Alright, so I'm giving Owl Familiar 4. Palinchron, 5 blue blue, 4/5 flying. When it enters the battlefield, untap up to 7 lands. 2 blue blue, return it to its owner's hand. This is good, but it is 7 mana. It actually doesn't do too much. One of the problems with Palinchron is that your opponent can respond to the trigger by killing it. So it's not like it's safe just because you can pay 4 mana and untap it. Now if you can play it and pass a turn, it's close to unkillable. I'm going to give Palinchron a 6 only, because I actually don't think the card is that good. One of the problems with Palinchron is when you play 7 mana, most of the time you're not going to be able to do much. I mean, you can always you have the option to return it, so that's nice. But most of the time you're not even going to do much more with your mana, so it's basically just an overcosted flyer. So I'm not in love with Palinchron. There is an infinite combo with High Tide and Palinchron. Because if you cast High Tide with 6 islands in play, you can create 12 mana, cost Palinchron for 7, untap your 6 mana, pay 4 to return it, and then you can go infinite. But it's not even clear what you're going to do with the mana. So Palinchron gets a 6, don't overrate that card. Plea for Power. Now this is the second Will of the Council card, 3 and a blue. So you and your opponent gets to vote for time or knowledge, and if time gets more votes, take an extra turn. Or if knowledge gets more votes, draw 3 cards. So you should always vote for knowledge, because if you vote time, your opponent is going to only get options. If you vote time and your opponent wants you to get an extra turn, he can vote time. But if he wants you to draw 3 cards, he can just vote knowledge. So always vote knowledge and draw 3 cards. This is a 3 and a blue for drawing 3 cards. This is a good card. I'm going to give it a 7. I think it's worse than Factor Fiction, though, just because Factor Fiction fills up your graveyard. Power Sinks, X and a blue. Counter target spell and controller pays X. So we've seen this card before. It's like a spell. With Condescend. But if you do, you can tap all lands and empty his or her mana pool. That ability is not super useful because you can just float mana in response. I guess one scenario where it's good is if your opponent is playing a deck with a bunch of counter spells and you cast Power Sink during their turn. They can no longer hold up mana for counter spell. But that's pretty narrow, so most of the time Power Sink is just going to be a counter spell. It's, I think, much worse than the actual card counter spell. So I'm going to give Power Sink a 4. I would most of the time try to stay away from that card. Repel, 3 and a blue. Put target creature on top of someone's library. So it's like a Griptide or Run Aground, but you can't bounce artifacts. I'm giving Repel a 5. I'm not blown away by this card. This is a pretty aggressive format, and if your opponent makes a bunch of tokens, Repel is not the greatest of answers. There are matchups where it's good. If you're playing against a big green deck, the card could be pretty good, but I'm most of the time going to stay away from Repel. It's not the end of the world if you have to play it. But Rescind, 1 blue blue. Return target permanent to its owner's hand, cycling 2. So it has cycling, so it's almost never a dead card, but it's pretty good against the card Imperial Armor. We can just bounce a creature, gain some tempo. I'm going to give Rescind a 5. It's not a card that you have to prioritize very high. Scrivener, 4 and a blue, 2/2. When it ends the battlefield, you return target instant card from your graveyard to your hand. So it is card advantages, but you have to pay for it. In this format, a 2/2 for 2 would be fine. So you're paying 3 mana to get a card. And you're getting a real card back, so it's not like you're just drawing a card, but you also have to have an instant in your graveyard. I'm going to give Scrivener a 4. I don't think it's that good. I don't think there's that many good instants you can get back. The best card I can think of is Prophetic Bolt. So Scrivener has some place in a blue-red spells deck, but I'm not blown away by it. Sea Drake, 2 and a blue for a 4/3 with flying, so that's insane. But when it comes into play, you have to return 2 lands you control to its owner's hand. I'm just gonna be honest, I have a super hard time reviewing this card. Because if your opponent has a removal spell, this is incredibly bad. If your opponent can deal with it, it's super efficient. My guess is the Sea Drake is like a 5 or a 6. I'm scared to play this card. If my opponent bounces it, I'm back to the Stone Age. If my opponent kills it, I'm also back to the Stone Age. I don't know. I mean, there are also the nice thing about Cedric is that later in the game, bouncing 2 lands is almost like an advantage. Like if you don't have any more land drops to make, it could even be an advantage. That's the nice thing about Cedric. So you shouldn't look at it like a 3 mana card necessarily. Although I think that most time you have Cedric, you're just gonna want to cast it on turn 3 and hope to win the game. But it is a hard card. It's very hard to evaluate for sure. Okay, move on to Serenity Efreet, an old classic. 2 and a blue for a 3/4 flyer. Beginning of the upgrade, it deals 1 damage to you. I think this card is a 7. Yes, it sucks that you have to take damage, but it's also super efficient. It kills your opponent very fast. It also blocks very good the turns comes into play, so that makes up for the fact that you lose a life. That being said, it can be a liability. If you play against a red deck, the 1 damage per turn can be very bad, especially if you're like at 7 life. It's almost possible for your opponent to wait you out, so against a red deck, it could be a liability. But I'm giving Serenity Efreet a 7, and it is very aggressive. Skywing Aven, 2 and a blue for 2/1, flying. Discard a card, return it to its owner's hand. So, another Madness outlet. This also has evasion, so that's very nice. Doesn't match up very well against Battle Screech, but in a Madness deck, the Skywing Aven is a 6. In a non-Madness deck, I think it's just a 5. I would much rather have Wild Mongrel, but depending on my curve, I could see where I want Skywing Aven over an Aquamoeba. Stroke of Genius, X2 and a blue. Target player draws X cards. Now we've seen a lot of card draw spells in this set. I actually think Stroke of Genius is one of the worst of them. I'm going to give Stroke of Genius a 5. I'm not in love with Stroke of Genius. It's super expensive. I'd much rather have Plea of Power. Yes, sometimes you're going to get to the super late game and draw 5 cards, and the other cards would have just drawn you 3. But I honestly think that Stroke of Genius is worse than Deep Analysis, because it's just hard to get to the late game in this format. Now, I was talking about the Infinite Combo with Palinchron and High Tide. I guess you could cast Stroke of Genius and kill your opponent if you have infinite mana. So if you get Palinchron, High Tide, and Stroke of Genius, you should message me or make a video. That would be insane. Every once in a blue moon, I guess that could happen. Alright, let's move on to Temporal Fissure. 4 and a blue, return target permanent to its owner's hand, Storm. A word of warning here, do not play this in a regular Storm deck. This is not the card you want when you storm off, because it doesn't win you the game. It can be very sweet to bounce your opponent's permanents, but you rather have Brain Freeze or Tempest. So Temporal Fissure has a home in a blue-white tempo deck where you have a bunch of Cloud of Fairies, Brainstorms, maybe some white 1-drops. And then if you can bounce 2 permanents, it's fine. If you can bounce 3 permanents, it's starting to become very good. So I'm giving Temporal Fissure a 5. But there's a lot of decks where you should never play it. Alright. Falakos Drifters, 2 blue for a 3/3. Discard a card against Shadow until end of turn. So this is another Madness outlet, which is nice. Also nice that you can block with regular creatures with it, but if you have a bunch of excess cards, you can start hitting your opponent for free unblockable. I mean, unless they have a shadow creature. So I like the fact that it's a card that you can always block with, but later in the game, if you want to kill your opponent and have a bunch of extra cards, you can do that too. So I'm giving Falakos Drifters a 6. Time Walk, oh boy. Now, to your surprise, I'm only going to give Time Walk an 8. I actually think Time Walk is obviously going to be great, but Time Walk has always been sort of overrated in fair sets. So if you were to take Time Walk and put it in Ixalan, it would be great, and you would play the Nord Blue decks, but it wouldn't be that sick. Because oftentimes you can't really do much with an extra turn. Whereas in Vintage you have all this power and Yawgmoth's Will and Snapcaster Mage and do it a lot of times, which you don't have in a Vintage Masters. So Time Walk you're always going to play, but it's not that insane. Speaking of cards that are not insane and that are power 9, we now have Time Twister. 2 and a blue. Each player shuffles his or her hand and graveyard into his or her library and then draws 7 cards. I'm going to give Time Twister a 4. I actually think the Time Twister is bad in almost all decks. It's not even that good in Storm. It is good in Storm if you can cast a bunch of rituals and then refill your hand. But even then, it costs 3 mana, so it's up a lot of your mana. So it's not like you're ahead by that much. So yeah, I think that if you get the Time Twister, I guess you can rare draft it. It probably pays for the draft or very close to it. But I would not put it in most of my decks. Tradewind Rider. 3 and a blue for a 1/4 with flying. You can tap 2 untap creature you control to return a permanent to its owner's hand. And this card is just pure gas. You can, for free, tap, bounce your opponent's creatures. Now, in the beginning, it's going to be somewhat manageable. But later in the game, when you bounce cards for free, develop your board, opponents have to replace 5 mana creature every turn. It's gonna get abusive. I'm gonna give Tradewind Rider an 8 because it is slow and it requires you to have board presence, but it is pretty broken once it gets going. Alright, Turnabout. 2 blue. You can choose artifact, creature, or land, tap all untapped permanents of that type, or tap them. So either you play this in a Storm deck where it generates mana, and I don't think it's that good in a Storm deck because you need to have 5 lands in play for this to even generate mana, and then if you have to go up on 4 mana, it doesn't do anything, it adds a Storm Kill, that's it. And other uses tap all your opponent's creatures and attack for the win. Neither of these are particularly good. I could see a blue Storm deck with High Tide. Their Turnabout could be a really good card, but I think Turnabout is a 4 and I would stay away from it most of the time. Upheaval. 4 blue, return all permanents to their owner's hand. I'm going to give Upheaval a 5. I don't think it's particularly good at all in this format. Problem is that you don't have too many mana rocks. And if you don't have mana rocks, Upheaval doesn't really do anything. I mean, this format is so fast that if you play 4 blue and if you have 9 lands in play, it could be good because you have free floating mana, but that's just not going to happen in this format. So I actually don't think Upheaval is particularly good. I would probably pass it most of the time in this format. Walrus Shapeshifter. 1 blue for a 0/1. As long as the top card of the graveyard is a creature card, Walrus Shapeshifter has the full text of that card and has 2 discarded cards. And you can pay 2 and discard a card. This card is only playable in Reanimator because you need something huge for this to be worth it. It's not worth it to just copy a random creature because you have to pay a cost. You have to cast this card and then discard your down card. So in Reanimator, we have something really good. I guess this card could be a 6. Most of the time, Walrus Shapeshifter is going to be unplayable. I'm going to give it a 1 in most decks, but in certain types of Reanimator shells, it could be good. But most of the time, it's bad. Alright. Waterfront Bouncer. 1 and a blue for 1/1. Blue tap, discard a card, return to a creature to its own hand. This card is deceptively powerful because yes, you have to discard a card, but it's also set with Madness. So if you discard a card with Madness, bounce something, you're getting the effect for free because you're still casting the card. And if you discard excess land, who cares? You can also use this on your own creatures, either some creatures which comes into play abilities like Flametongue Clavu, or you can save them for removal. So Waterfront Bounce is a deceptively powerful card. I'm going to give it a 7. I still don't think it's a bomb or like a rock solid, but I think it's rock solid. Even better in the Madness decks, but all blue decks probably want a Waterfront Bounce. Alright, that was blue. Let's move on to black. Addle. 1 and a black. You choose a color, target player reveals his value, you choose a card of that color, that player discards that card. Sort of like a Thoughtseize, but you have to choose the color beforehand and it costs 2 mana. I don't like this card too much. I mean, I can see it being good against other slow decks. If you're playing against a slow deck, it's good. But if you're playing against Storm, it could be really good. But if you're playing against an aggressive deck, you basically don't do anything. I'm going to give Adel a 5. Actually, no, I'm going to give Adel a 4. I would like to stay away from that for most time. Animate Dead, 1 in the black. Now, I could read the Oracle text, but it's very confusing. Basically, you can reanimate any creature card. It gets -1, -0, and if Animate Dead were to get destroyed, you lose the creature. I think Animate Dead is a 7. It's almost good in every scenario because black is a color that has a lot of removal. So you can kill the best creature and then steal it. It gets even more abusive if you can pump something good in your graveyard. I think Animate Dead is much better than Reanimate because losing life is very important in Limited. I mean, in Legacy, when you reanimate Griselbrand, you can gain the life back by life. Or you don't care. But this is a format where life loss is relevant. So Animate Dead is a rock solid card because 2 mana reanimate any creature. It's good, and there is not too many disenchant effects. Baleful Force, 5 black, 7/7. At the beginning of each upkeep, you draw a card and lose 1 life. This is a card that if you cast it for 8 mana, you're going to lose because it's going to be too late, and at that point, the ability almost going to be a liability. But if you can reanimate this on turn 2, you're in business. So Baleful Force is a 7 or an 8 in a reanimator deck and a 2 in a normal regular deck. Cabal Ritual, 1 and a black. Add black to your mana pool. Threshold, add black, 5 black mana. If you have 7 or more cards. In a Storm deck, this is very good because you can often end up with 7 cards in your graveyard. You cast a bunch of card draw spell, frantic searches. So in a Storm deck, Cabal Ritual is an 8. In a non-Storm deck, Cabal Ritual is a 1. It's completely unplayable in a deck that is not a Storm deck. You should never play it. Carnifex, 1 black mana for a 2/2. At the beginning of your upkeep, you tap it unless you pay 1 life. So, if you're okay with dealing 2 to your opponent while taking 1 yourself, this is the card for you. It comes down on turn 1. And you also have the option of later in the game to not pay the life anymore. Let's say your life total becomes critically low, or Carnifex can't even get through. You can just start tapping. This is a 7 in the red-black suicide deck. It's a role player. This is a card you want. But in a normal black deck, I would not even want to play it. So, as with a lot of these cards, Carnifex is very situational. 7 in the suicide deck. It's like a 3 in a normal black deck. So, not too impressed by the card. Shameless Edict, 1 and a black. Target player sacrifice a creature, flashback 5 black. Again, the theme is this card is very good against the slower decks because you can nab their first threat. And you can also very decent against the Madness deck because their enablers often cost 2 mana. So in those matchups, Shameless Edict is like a 6. It's still not great because this is a very slow card to get value from. However, if you're playing as aggressive token decks, the deck loses value. So I'm going to give Shameless Edict a 6. But don't be afraid to board that card out if you're playing as a go wide deck or a goblin deck. Choking Sands, 1 black. Destroy target non-swamp land. If that land was non-basic, Choking Sands deals 2 damage to land's controller. I'm going to just give this card a 3. It's not a good card. Even though it's a Stone Ray for 3 mana, it's not worth it. And you can't even destroy swamps, which I guess isn't super relevant, but sometimes it is. And the fact it's non-basic wouldn't even make the card good anyway, but there is not too many non-basic lands. I guess if you see someone splashing with some really weird non-basic lands, I guess you can maybe board it in, but don't play Choking Sands. That's my advice to you. Krovax the Curse, 2 black for a 0/0, but it ends to the battle for 4 counters on it, so it's like a 4/4 for 4. Beginning of up, you may sacrifice a creature. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on it. If you don't, remove. And you can get flying for 1 black mana. I don't like this card too much. Sacrificing a creature is expensive. And if you can't do it, you will slowly lose counters. The fact that it gains flying is nice, but I'm going to give Korvax the Curse a 5. And I'm not in love with it, but it can be pretty good in the suicide versions of the decks because you can like sacrifice a Carnophage or something and then start flying over. But yeah, you have to keep that up though. As soon as you can't feed it anymore, it starts shrinking, and that's not great. Cruel Bargain, 3 black, so it's a Necromana. Draw 4 cards, you lose half your life rounded up. I think this card is a 2. I think this card is almost always unplayable. There's also an extremely hard mana cost, and effect is not. This is not the right format for this effect. I mean, if you're playing Vintage Cube, we're talking. But maybe if you're playing a Storm deck and playing as a control deck, I could see maybe sideboarding this card, but it is very narrow and not good at all. Dark Hatchling, 4 black for a 3/3 flyer. When it comes into play, it destroys target non-black creature. Can't be regenerated. It's a very powerful card. It's a little expensive, but this is one of the good cards in the black-white mid-range deck, because that's all about value. This is also a fine card to reanimate, because it blows something away. I'm going to give this card a 7. Dark Ritual, a card with almost always overrated in limited. It's not particularly good, but if you're playing Storm, you want it. If you're playing Storm, Dark Ritual is a 7, otherwise it's 3. I mean, you can use it to speed up something, but most of the time you want to stay away from Dark Ritual. Dolphin Mercenary, 2 and a black for a 2/1 with Shadow, so it's already a decent card. It's unblockable. You can also pump it for 1 and a black. This card is a 7. It's very good in the Suicide Black deck, because evasion plus pump is very good. So, very aggressive, and it's good. You could pick it high if you're playing black. If you're not the aggressive version of black deck, it loses value, but it's probably still playable, because it kills them very fast. Also, it's mercenary enough for some reason. It doesn't matter for this set, but it's interesting that apparently it's a mercenary now, so you can get it with some cards from Mercadian Mask. Deathhead's Buzzer, 1 black 2/1 flyer. When it dies, all creatures get -1/-1. So it's good against the Battle Screech decks, but as I said in the White review, they have some ways around it with Deathblade Elite. And that being said, a 2/1 flyer for 3 is borderline playable. So I'm going to give Deathhead's Buzzer a 5. It's fine, and it goes up in value for playing against Battle Screech, but also bear in mind it's going to kill some of your own creatures, like the card here next to Dolphin Mercenary. So it can also be a liability. Demonic Tutor, 1 and black. You get any card from your library. This card is a 7. May come to a surprise too, but Demonic Tutor is not that great in a regular limited format where you can't get a bomb. If you have some insane bomb, it goes up in value, but Demonic Tutor is good, but it's not that good, because a regular, even in Vintage Master, it's hard for you to have a very broken card. So don't overrate Demonic Tutor, but you should probably play it in all your black decks. I guess that looks pretty good. Anyway, Demonic Tutor gets a 7. Drakestar Forgotten, 4 and a black 0/0. It gets X counters for X's number of creature cards in all graveyards, and you can remove a counter to give a creature -1/-1. I'm going to give this a 4. I don't like it too much at all. It's going to be almost unplayable in the first couple of turns, and the fact remains it doesn't grow by time. So the power and tough is locked in when you cast it. So you can't cast this on turn 5 and have it grow later. It has to be a lot of cards in graveyards already. So I wouldn't want to play this card unless there was some special type of matchup. Like in a black-white mid-range mirror, this card could be good. Otherwise, probably stay away from it. Expunge. Now this is a great card. It starts a non-artifact non-black creature for 2 and a black. It can't be regenerated and it has cycling. So if you're playing as another black deck, you can cycle it. And there is a version of black-white which has Astral Slide, and their cycler goes up in value. Only problem with the cycling, this card is such a good card that you almost never want to cycle it. But it destroys your opponent's best creature, and it cycles otherwise. So Expunge gets a 7. Fall and a Scary, 1 and a black, 2/2 flanking, can't block. 7 in the Suicide black deck, not great otherwise. Only played if you're aggressive, but it is a pretty hard card to block. So again, the aggressive black deck, go for it. Famine, 3 black, it deals 3 damage to each creature and each player. I would argue that the fact that Famine deals 3 damage to a player is a drawback, because when you want to sweep the board, you don't want to damage players. That being said, this card could be a blowout against a white deck, so I'm going to give Famine a 7 as a sideboard card and a 4 as a main deck card, because actually I'm going to give it a 5 as a main deck card, because it is a sweeper after all, but it's hard to make work, and the fact that it damages player is usually a drawback. Fledging Djinn, 1 and a black for 2/2 flying. At the beginning of your upkeep, it deals 1 damage to you. And 8 in the Suicide deck. This is exactly the card you want. It hits them very hard. And the fact that it just damages you, your deck is built to not care about that. But Fledging Djinn is the reason why this Suicide black deck works, because of evasion. The idea is to go turn 1 Carnage Fetch, turn 2 Fledging Djinn. And then just attack. Hymn to Tourach, black. Target player discards 2 cards at random. In the deck that can reliably cast this on turn 2 or 3, this is an 8. This is a super swinging card. It can just win the game on the spot. Only bad thing about Hymn is that it's a very bad top deck late in the game. But it can be a blowout against the Storm deck. Be a little wary when you play against the Madness deck. You want to cast him when you're tapped out, because otherwise you can just maybe Madness out something. Right, Ygritte, 3 and a black for 3 with haste. At the beginning of your end step, sacrifice Ygritte, and you can in your upkeep exile a black creature card from your graveyard. If you do, return it to the battlefield. I think Ygritte is a 1. I think it's unplayable. It can only attack once. It cannot block because it dies at the end of turn. You have to feed it every turn. It's just not worth it. It is a constructed card for Dredge, but I think Ygritte is completely unplayable in Limited. You should never play it. Kesseldrix, 2 black, 4/4 first strike, so it beats almost everything in combat. At the beginning of your upkeep, if your opponent has no creatures, it deals 4 damage to you. So I guess it could be a liability against a Storm deck. But almost every deck in the format's gonna have some kind of creatures. Only time I can see this being bad is if your opponent is playing some sort of control deck that just has some kind of pacifism effect. But there is no pacifism effect in this set, so you can't even get punished by that. I think Kesseldrix is a 7. Just hits extremely hard, and its drawback almost never comes up. Could come up if your opponent has no creatures and can start chump blocking. But most of the time, Kesseldrix is going to be great. Lakratus Champion, speaking of great, 4 black for 6/3. When it comes into play, target player loses 3 life. That's your opponent, probably. When it leaves the battlefield, a player gains 6 life, but to make up for that, it can regenerate for 1 black mana. And remember, some of the removal spells cannot kill black creatures. Those who say they can't regenerate. Yeah, this card is an 8. The fact that it is 6 life when it comes into play is almost fireball. So it's like it gets your opponent to range very quickly. Then it's a formidable threat. It can regenerate through anything. Sometimes it just kills your opponent. And it's, as I said, very hard to kill this. This is a card which gets killed by Afterlife, because Afterlife has a clause that says it can't be regenerated. So Lakratus Champion is an 8, it's a bomb. I would even play it in the Suicide black deck, because even though it costs 6 mana, it deals them 6, and then you have to chump block it every turn. Living Death, 3 black. You basically swap the creatures in play with the creatures in the graveyard. Now this is a build around, but this is a card which, if you take it, pick one, pack one, you can build around it. You have to take cards like Putrid Imp. You'll probably combine it with blue, so you can have Frantic Search. And then you want to stuff your graveyard with creatures. You can also chump block. If your opponent hasn't seen Living Death, he may get a very unpleasant surprise, and you can probably just win the game. If one knows about living death, they're gonna be playing around it somewhat. If they're competent, they're gonna jump block, they're gonna throw away the creatures. The key is if you can somehow make that a drawback and maybe not even cost living death. I'm gonna give living death an 8 because it is very good, but it also requires setup, and this format is not that high on ways to enable living death, but it can be an absolute blowout. Lurking Evil, triple black, pay half your life because of 4/4 horror creature with flying. I think this is a free. I will stay away from it most of the time. This is one of the cards that could make Dark Ritual playable, because triple black is so hard to get. You could play this in a Suicide Black deck, but even then it's not that good because you have to pay half your life. And remember, a lot of the decks in this format are aggressive, so I'm going to give Lurking Evil a 3. Alright, moving on. We have Mesmeric Fiend. 1 and a black for a 1/1. When it comes into play, target opponent reads his or her hand and you choose a card from non-land card. Exile that card. And when it dies, it comes back. Yeah, 1/1 is very fragile. This is a very good card against Storm, but against most of the deck is slightly better than Adel. The fact that you don't have to choose a color is nice, but the fact that they get the card back is bad. So I don't like it against red decks, but I think Mesmeric Fiend is a 6. It still plugs a little hole in their game plan, and sometimes a 1/1 could have some uses. Also, it is a reasonable card to reanimate if you know your opponent has a very good card in his or her hand. So Mesmeric Fiend gets a 6. Nature's Ruin, 2 and a black, destroy all green creatures. Okay, so if your opponent is heavy green, this is a 10. This is a Plague Wing for 3 mana. If your opponent is half green or not super high green, it's like a 6. It's gonna kill 1, maybe 2 creatures. And sometimes it's gonna kill anything. And if your opponent is not playing green, this is 1. So it's a very swingy card. But you know when you want it and it's gonna be great. Necropotence, 3 black mana. You don't get a draw step. And whenever you discard a card, exile that card. And you can pay 1 life to draw a card, basically. But you don't get it until the end of turn. I don't like this card too much. There is a drain life, but it's white-black. So even if you're playing Storm, I would try to avoid Necropotence. I'm going to give it a 3. It's basically on the same power level as Cruel Bargain. Stay away from Necropotence. This format is too fast, and it's hard to make the extra cards work. I mean, you will need to be playing Storm and against a control deck for me to want it. Nightscape Familiar, 1 and black for a 1/1 that regenerates 1 and black, and it makes blue and red spells cost 1 less. This is a good card in the Storm deck because it's like a mana accelerator that also blocks and regenerates. And a regenerator is fine usually. So in Storm deck, Nightscape Familiar is a 7, blue-black Storm that is. In all other black decks, it's like a 5. It's not great. Paralyze, 1 black mana. You tap creature and doesn't untap, so it's like Claustrophobia. But they can pay 4 mana to untap it. In the Suicide Black deck, this is a 6. Fine removal spell because they usually don't have time. In most other black decks, I don't like it too much. I think it's a 4 in regular black deck. It's the fact that they can start untapping it is not great. So yeah. Phyrexian Defiler, 2 black for a 3/3. You can sacrifice it to give a creature -3/-3. This is 6. It's reasonable body, 3/3 for 4 mana, heal giant, and then you can kill something that maybe has flying or has regenerate or an annoying thing. So yeah, fine card. Predatory Night Stalker. Now this is a card which has a lot of different people have very different opinions about this card. So 3 black for a 3/2. When it comes into play, your opponent sacrifices a creature if you want them to. It's a May. In some matchup, this is going to be very good. You're going to get something relevant, and you're going to 3/2 for 5. Against a token deck or goblin decks, this is not going to be great. This has a varying power level. It's a 7 against some decks, and it's a 4 against the go wide tokens decks. So be aware. You can, if you have a reasonable sideboard option, you can board this card out against the token decks and goblin decks. Putrid Imp, 1 black mana for 1/1. Discard a card against flying, and if threshold, you have +1/+1 and can't block. I would only play it if I had some graveyard synergies. I would be some kind of green-black threshold deck, or I would be Reanimator. Then it's a 7. It's a key card. It's a card that enables all your graveyard shenanigans. Otherwise, I don't think the card is playable. So it's either a 7 or a 2. Reanimate, 1 black mana. You can put a creature from any graveyard into play under your control. You lose life equals to convert on mana cost. Now, unlike Animate Dead, I don't think Reanimate is playable in all black decks. I think you will have to have a Reanimate fee, because the life loss is huge. This is not a card you can reliably cast on turn 5, because you may be at such a low life total it doesn't do anything. So in a Reanimate deck it's a 7, maybe even an 8. In a regular black deck I think it's like a 3. If you play against a black deck against another slow deck, you can play it, because the life loss may not matter, but the life loss is huge. Recurring Nightmare, 2 black for enchantment. You can sacrifice a creature and return this to your hand, and you get the creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. This is an 8. It's a very powerful card, and it has some nice combos with Survival of the Fittest if you're lucky enough to get that. It's also very good with Putrid Imp. And there is also some nice combos with there is a called Thopter Squadron, and you can then sacrifice. You can make a bunch of Thopters and then sacrifice it, get something back. So yeah, Recurring Nightmare has a lot of combo potential. It requires some setup. I don't think it's a 9 or a 10. Reign of the Pit, 4 black. Each player sacrifice a creature, put an XX black demon, vary X total power of creatures sacrificed this way. And hard card to evaluate. Both players sacrifice a creature costs 1 black mana. It's not particularly good anyway, but the fact that you get a big demon could be good. This is kind of nice to play when you have no creatures in play. So then, let's say your opponent has a big creature, you get a large demon of equivalent size. I think this card is a 6. I'm not in love with this card. I think it's very situational. Sarcomancy, 1 black mana for enchantment, and you could put a 2/2 into play. Beginning of the upkeep, if there are no zombies, it is 1 damage too. I think this card is much better than Carnophage, because as long as the zombie stays on the battlefield, you get to not take 1 damage. And there are also a reasonable amount of zombies, so even if they kill your token, you may not even take damage. If you play a second Sarcomancy, you will also negate the drawback. So in the Suicide Black deck, this is a 7. In a regular black deck, I think it's a 5. I actually think that it's playable, because a 2/2 for 2 is reasonably costly. Alright, Scourge Familiar. 4 and a black for a 3/2 flyer, and you can discard a card and add black to your mana pool. Yeah, okay, this has some abilities that could work. The problem is that this costs 5 mana. If this was a 3 mana card that was a 1/1 flyer with this ability, it would be much better, because 5 mana, at that point you don't really need too many more mana. Also, you don't have too many cards left in your hand. It's nice that it enables Madness, but yeah, I don't like this card. I could see play it if I had Living Death, because then I can dump my hand. But it's not even good in Storm, so I'm going to give it a 4, and I would try to stay away from it. 3/2 flyer for 5 is a little too expensive in my mind. Spinal Graft, 1 and a black. Enchant creature. Enchant creature gets +3/+3. When enchant creature becomes the target of a spell or ability to destroy, that creature can't be regenerated. So, this is a centerpiece of the Suicide Black deck. The idea is to go black 1-drop, which you have Carnophage or Sarcomancy, and then turn to Spinal Graft and then hope that they don't do anything. Yeah, I'm not in love with this Suicide Black deck, but it is a very good. It can just win games up that no other deck can. So I think it's a 7 in that deck. I think you want Spinal Graft. You don't want a million of them, but it is how you win games. If you're not playing Suicide Black, you should never play, of course. Tendrils of Agony. This gets basically the same rating as Brain Freeze. If you don't have a win condition, it's a 10. Also, if you already have a Brain Freeze, I wouldn't prioritize Tendrils too high. But if you have Tendrils number 1, Tendrils number 2, is pretty valuable because you can stack them. So you can maybe cost the first 10 routes for 5, and then the second 10 routes for 6, and then win the game. So, Tyrant's Choice. Obviously 10 routes is a 0 if you're not playing Storm. It's definitely not worth it. Tyrant's Choice is another Will of the Council card, but basically it deals your opponent 4 damage, because you cannot make your opponent sacrifice a creature. It's impossible if they don't want it. If you vote for death, your opponent can just vote for torture, and then he will lose 4 life. I don't love this card, even in the Suicide Black decks. The Suicide Black decks wins by having a continuous source of life loss. So it's like a 5 in a Suicide Black deck. You will play it if you run out of playables, but it's not really that good. It only goes to the face. It doesn't have cycling. And if you get your opponent down to 6, you need to draw 2 of these and not 1. Because black is not really known for its burn. I mean, I could see a deck where it's fine. I mean, if you cost 5 of these, you win the game. So I guess there is that. Urborg Uprising, 4 and a black. You return up to 2 target creature from your graveyard to your hand and you draw a card. And this is not really the greatest format for it, but it is really 3 for 1, but you have to work for it. I'm going to give it a 5, because I actually was not very impressed by this card when I was playing this format. This format is a little too fast for this kind of effect, but it can be absolutely backbreaking in a grindy matchup. Vampiric Tutor, 1 black mana. You get such a life for any card, and you put that on top and you lose 2 life. Now there's only two times I would play this card. Is if I'm playing Storm, then the card has to be good, because you can get a win condition or the best card in your deck. Or if I had some incredible bomb, like Control Magic or something. I think that in most decks, Vampiric Tutor is gonna be a 4. But in some decks it could be a 6. Okay, rounding off black here, we have Viscera the Dreadful, 3 black, 5/5 flying, tap destroy target creature. This is a 9. It is an incredible card. It has flying, so you can even block some of the flyers that kill you. And then once you do, it starts destroying creatures. It's also insanely good to reanimate. It's one of the best reanimation targets in the entire format. So if you can go turn 1 Putrid in, turn 2 Animate Dead this card, your opponent has a very low amount of outs to kill it. I mean, the black removal doesn't kill it, Expunge doesn't kill it, Dark Hatchling doesn't kill it. White has some option in Afterlife and Radiant's Judgment. But if they don't have the answer, you're just going to win the game. So Viscera gets a 9. Only reason it doesn't give a 10 is that it doesn't instantly stabilize the board. And if your opponent has an answer for it, it's a 1/4. Yawgmoth's Bargain, 4 black. Skip your draw step, pay 1 life, draw a card. I'm going to give this the same rating as Necropotence, 3. I think this is not the format for it. But if you're playing a grindy deck against another grindy deck, this card could be good. So I will only sideboard it in a very grindy matchup. Yawgmoth's Will, 2 and a black. Until end of turn, you may play cards from your graveyard, and if a card will be put into the graveyard from anywhere this turn, exile that card instead. This card is, again, not particularly good in Limited. It is good in the Storm deck, but it's only good in the Storm deck if you have a bunch of Dark Rituals. So, Yawgmoth's Will gets a 6 in a dedicated Storm deck, because it could still be very possible that Yawgmoth's Will doesn't do anything. And oftentimes Blue-Black Storm has better option than Yawgmoth's Will to win the game. But would be nice if you have a bunch of rituals and tendrils. It can be pretty broken. So it's still a potentially good card. But don't overrate Yawgmoth's Will. This is not Vintage where you have Lotus, Moxen, and Ancestral and cards like that. I mean, you have to be realistic. The chance of opening Black Lotus and Yawgmoth's Will is incredibly low. So black, in my mind, is one of the worst colors in Vintage Masters. I don't like Suicide Black decks, and it's a lot of the cards drag in a different directions. The themes isn't as good either. I don't think the Reanimate deck is particularly good. So just bear in mind that black may not be one of the strongest color in this format.